What's up, everybody? It is Sunday for those watching. Unless you're in chat right now. We got to do these ahead of time to give our editor a chance. We are live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Lawler, where we stream every day but Tuesday and Sunday. Hanging out and doing a Q&A video, number 40. It's crazy. We just talked about it a little bit on stream here before I hit the record button for y'all. We're almost at a full year, like every single week. 52, 12 more weeks, so 3 more months of doing this, and 4 more months of doing this. Well, no, 3 months. I was right. 3 more months of doing this, and we'll be at a year of doing this straight, which is actually crazy that you guys keep having questions and keep asking me things you want my opinion on. It's absolutely unbelievable. But like I said, we're hanging out on Twitch. We got people in chat hanging out, saying hello to the YouTube frogs. Hello, everybody on the YouTube as well. If you guys haven't considered hitting subscribe, do it now. It's greatly appreciated. Trying to hit 100K by the end of this year. It's a lofty goal, but we've got some exciting stuff coming up to do it. So help us with that. It'd be greatly appreciated. But you guys know how this goes. There's a couple different ways you can get your questions answered. You can either on this video, leave a comment down below. The ones with the most likes get pushed to the top. Those are the ones we usually answer, as long as I can create good conversation out of them. Or you can come hang out on stream and ask me live as well, and we'll alternate between the two, because we've been doing these live on stream. It's been a lot of fun. So with that said, let us transition over to the other page and get into our first question, which is one that I think a lot of people have been wanting me to ask for quite a while, and that's why we are picking it. Jatron says, with these super teams, do you think throughout time more teams will become super teams, or will these insane teams stay few in numbers? The reason why I picked this question is for one particular reason. It goes back, to me, to the question of EU, inconsistency or depth. And I know that's a interesting topic for a lot of people, but the biggest thing I think about EU is that they take their top tier talent and it trickles through a lot of different teams. There's a lot of teams in Europe that have a star player that stand out as compared to all of that talent being towards the top, like it is in North America. Like North America top 6 is pretty stacked for the top tier talent. And then the teams, as they get lower and lower, definitely miss out on that. And I think you're going to continue to see that transition anytime that we have one region in general either take a leap ahead in results, or anytime you think that the roster as a whole is kind of poor. When North America during this offseason was like, yo, we're going to take some big teams and we are going to switch over reciprocal. We're going to bring in an atomic. We're going to do this or that. There's going to be a lot of transitions that happen. And we saw that not last split, but the split before, again, where a lot of European teams did a little bit of the mix up and stuff like that. I just put out a video on Friday talking about Vitality and about a new era possibly approaching. What do you think is going to happen if Vitality changes their roster? The mix-up and the changes, the domino effect of availability that happens when some of those players change, when new talent like Oski, Atau, Zen, etc. come into the scene. It causes a shakeup. So while I do think we will continue to see super teams, how many, I don't know. I think it varies a lot based upon like circumstance of who ends up where and who goes where. But I do think that you will always see it being somewhat prevalent, because at the end of the day, teams are trying to always perform and be better than what they were. And the easiest way to do that is new upcoming talent, new absolutely mechanically cracked prodigies, as we've deemed them. I think that's always going to stay somewhat prevalent. Once things kind of play out, you do see some refinement. You see some rosters kind of switch and transition to certain things, but yeah, it's interesting to see on how that stuff does develop over time. So depth or inconsistency, spreading of talent versus refinement at the top, I think that's always going to be a thing. So pretty interesting to see how that stuff plays out. What did he say? Asked question about RLCS scene. Like, for as you were on... Okay, I didn't just read that dumb. It hurts my brain reading that. About the RLCS scene... You were on RLCS. What were the restrictions like arguing on the rest? It's different on the desk than from first touch. Do you think the desk should be more strong about their opinion? Gotcha. You worded that very confusing. You're basically asking, when you're having bold takes, bold opinions, compared to the RLCS desk versus first touch. First touch is a unique circumstance because even though it is Psyonix backed, it is a podcast that is 100% there for Psyonix to be able to directly talk about topics that are controversial. Even though Psyonix themselves aren't the ones talking and directing it, like the developers and the staff, that is a representation of them. And it allows them to talk about seeding stuff, Admin calls. Controversial topics allow First Touch to talk about it, which is awesome. I do like the fact that First Touch has the ability to go and spearhead directly on. I will say for the RLCS broadcast and for the cast, you have to be a little bit more suit and tie, a little bit more strict with that. You can't just go off the deep end. But even so, in the past year or so, it has gotten a lot more boisterous. There's a lot more talking over each other and argumentative stuff and people having crazy takes. I mean, case in point, look at Gibbs talking about the Daniel typical atomic stuff and the roster grades. In the past, everybody would be like, sunshine and rainbows, everybody gets an A, thumbs up. And like Gibbs is willing to say, like, you gave up Sipical. I understand that, you know, maybe that's out of your control, but as a general rating, him going away is a 4, you know? Those types of things and those types of conversations would happen. I personally think that I could always be bolder. I think people could always have a stronger opinion on the desk because I think those personalities need to shine. I think that people sometimes are too nice, but I do think that some of these bold takes could be more bold and more educated. Some of the takes I see are just like, man, that is so far off base. I don't even, but again, that's my opinion. Maybe that is the point of that take, is to have those conflicting opinions, you know? There's too many fence sitters, I think, in esports as a whole. And it's nice having some people that aren't afraid to stick to their guns and be that guy, even if people don't like them. I mean, Johnny Boy has obviously been extremely adamant about some of his opinions about EU and SSA and MENA and whatever. And I think that's great. It's good to have someone advocate heavily for that stuff, especially on broadcast, because it does bring insight and conversation surrounding it. I think that's very healthy, as long as it's done in a professional way, which they do a pretty good job of on the RLCS. And Leaf, obviously being the host, tries to navigate that conversation so it stays on topic and they can move forward. But there's only so much you can do. I remember when I was with RLCS, it was very restricted, extremely restricted. I mean, when Epic when Epic acquired Psyonix, we weren't allowed to talk about it. We just couldn't. Even though I was positive about the thing, I thought it was only going to bring positive things to Rocket League. I thought it was going to do so many positive things. Because we are technically an indirect representation, we weren't allowed to talk about it. And I thought that was always a negative. And it seems like that has loosened up quite a bit over the last 2 years. So it is nice to see the guys being able to have an opinion and say, like, yo, this format sucks. Because in the past, we couldn't do that. So it has gotten better. There has definitely been some restrictions, but it is starting to improve and progress to a point where you are allowing those personalities to come through, which I'm a big fan of. I always think there's more need and desire for that. So, yeah, 100%, man. I think there was definitely some restrictions and it's gotten better. Always could be more. Could always be more bold takes. Not necessarily a question, but I asked a question on my last Q&A video where should I do a video about the history of Alpha Boost? And it seems like overwhelming people are yes. So I can tell you guys when we go into long form content and do some like scripted, like heavy B-roll content, history of Alpha Boost will definitely be one of them. Just want to give you guys a heads up, just so you guys are aware. Question from Krennic says, casters I've seen kind of beef with each other over various things, whether it's breaking rotation when casting or a caster overshadowing another. Is there ever bad blood between casters? I don't think necessarily. Maybe in the heat of the moment, it gets people are invested in it, and usually at the high end, most guys understand that like we are doing this as a team. My job as a commentator is to make my other commentator look as good as possible and to set them up and to make sure that they can be successful. I'm not trying to look smarter or this or that than them, and if they are, shame on them. But it is a collective effort from the esports staff to production to the casters to everybody involved. Your job is to put on as entertaining of a product as possible as a collective. It is not about you. While yes, you are hired and you are trying to get a job compared to somebody else, sometimes those things do come up. But it depends on what kind of rapport you have with that caster. Like the example I give is at We Play in Ukraine, Spaceman was feeling overwhelmed. He wasn't feeling good about his casting. I'm not going to go be like, yo, Spaceman, do this, try these things. I'm going to allow him to approach me and be there as an option for him to bounce feedback off of, rather than be like, hey man, you messed up here, fix these things, right? So it depends on what kind of rapport you have with the people and if they are searching out for that help or not. But usually casters have pretty good rapport. They have to, otherwise it shows on camera. And those are things that are talked about before they go live. Like before a match starts, most commentators will be like, yo, I've got these talking points. If you want to set me up for those, I'd appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to really hit on? Is there certain things that you like, dislike? But eventually you develop a chemistry with your co-commentators and you understand their tendencies and everything else, just like players on the field. That rapport and that chemistry has to be built over time. So there is also pairings that are put into Rocket League for style reasons. Like Wavepunk and Achieves are phenomenal together. I love Wavepunk to death, but I don't think his game knowledge is anywhere near Achieves. But I think Wavepunk's cadence, storyline building, and some other like they all have their different expertises that when they pair together, they're easily one of my favorite duos. Wavepunk and Achieves are absolutely fantastic together. Finding those duos is what's really important to make sure that a cast can become iconic. Because as a caster, you never want to really detract from the, like, you never want to be the main focal point of a broadcast. You're there to add and create an atmosphere. So it's a very finite approach, or not finite. It's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say it's like fragile, but there's a very cautious approach, and it definitely needs like refinement over time. And it's not going to happen immediately, but finding those two that pair really well, there can be like a natural chemistry, but then there can also be the chemistry that's built over years of knowing each other that just it feels right. And sometimes that happens through circumstance. You know, sometimes you just fall into place and you're like, wow, I really click with this guy. Awesome. It can be meticulous, a bit meticulous. I think that's a good word for it. Yeah, we'll go with that. Glass from chat says, do you think fans on LAN tournaments would give more nerves or more hype to teams? Both, actually. Some teams do really well under pressure, and I'm going to pair it with Miggy's question, where he says, what makes a team like Endpoint do poorly during a group switch stage as compared to doing well during bracket play? What are the factors that make it so different? And it comes down to mentality. Pairing these two questions together, mentality is a lot of it. The finite of, if we don't win here, we go home, can make or break some teams. Some teams do really well under pressure and understand that if I lose here, I go home. That motivates and makes that seriousness come in and we perform better. Or some people, you know, get too confident and become complacent and fall off. That same thing can happen at LAN, right? At LAN, the crowd can be cheering for or against you. Some people like being the underdog. There's no pressure on us. Nobody's rooting for us to win. Let's go prove everybody wrong. We have no pressure on us. Nobody expects us to win this series. So let's take that pressure off ourselves and we'll just go out and compete. Let's go do our thing. On the other side of things, some people live in that moment. Scrubkill is a prime example. You look at how Vitality did in Season 7 and how much he fed off the crowd. That's his environment. He loves that. There's certain players that have a different cause and effect when it comes to LAN events or not. Home field advantage. Everybody cheering for Cloud9, even though the European team's the favorite. I was there in Vegas. I heard the difference for Cloud9 versus Dignitas. Same thing. Everybody talks about how EU is so great about welcoming every team. But like, if you're trying to tell me that Dignitas did not have a clear favorite at London over NRG, you're so unbelievably lying. The crowd was hugely in favor of Dignitas and rooting for the favorites. Without a doubt, they were inherently biased, as they should be, for their region. And there's nothing wrong with that. So depending on how you view that, or if you're used to that environment or not, 100%. It can provide more nerves or less. Some people rival in it. Some people fall apart in it. Some people don't live up to the hype. It varies a lot. And that's kind of that LAN element that I really do miss. The fans. The fans make a huge difference. It even applies to casters, man. You know how much easier it is to cast at LAN? Even though there's a lot more pressure, there's cameras, you're at a live event, there's people around, and that does add a different level of pressure because it's a lot more serious. It's a much more grandiose. It is a bigger moment. Those are the ones that they use for the highlight reels. You got to make sure what you say really sticks. You know how much easier it is to just let the crowd speak for you? A hype moment happens rather than having to leave a pause and nothing in white noise. You've got people cheering. That's so much easier. It's so much easier to feed off that energy and be into the moment when there's a crowd. So it goes both ways. It goes both ways. Some people can find that really intimidating. For a lot of casters who have done it, speaking from my own circumstance, live events are where I think I thrive. I love being in that scenario. I feel like I do a much better job with my work because it just feels more natural and genuine. And the crowd is a big factor of that. Absolute huge factor. Also, just being in person with commentators, the rapport, the chemistry and stuff is just so much easier. Nonverbal communication goes a really long way. John says, with the introduction of away skins, do you think it would be a neat idea to make home maps for orgs to use? So we talked about this one, and I think I can expand upon it a lot. People talk about home and away colors, home and away maps, and like stadiums. And this goes back a couple different ways. With sponsors and stuff coming in on the decals, I think in time we are definitely going to need to see some sort of sponsorship. I think Psyonix has a really cool position because they can put sponsors on billboards, they can put them on the side panels, and now they can put them on cars. That is space that they can sell and make a pretty good penny off of. As for organizations, the ability to position themselves and say, hey, we want to pick up a Rocket League team, we want some funding. If you guys pick us up and put you guys as a sponsor and provide us some funding, we'll put you on a decal in the game and we'll promote it that way. How would you like that spot? Pretty cool, right? And that positioning is really important. And I think although you are trying to appeal more so to the casuals, you know, people who are fans of said organization, they buy the decal. That decal gets showed in casual games across the board. It is also important that when you have a broadcast that's pulling 100,000 plus viewers, that you also wear those decals in game. I think Rocket League still lacks quite a bit from personality. I don't think there's enough B-roll content or interviews or ways to showcase the players when they come into the game. There's no rookie spotlights. That stuff just doesn't exist, and I think it's unfortunate. So the only thing that is an identifier to players on the field is their nameplate and their car and the way their car looks. And if we just put them all the same and say, hey, you all run the space station decal rather than Daniel having, you know, whatever decal that's unique to him, you lose a little bit of that personality. And I think that's unfortunate. I think in time, if these sponsors keep coming in, there is going to be a point where they are required in their contract to do that. Or you can do an opposite end and change it with Bacchus mod where you can force decals for the visual. So as long as the person that they're spectating, the actual computer that's pulling the broadcast from, they can use Bacchus mod or something, and they can make it so all the decals change for people watching. They could do that as well. That way the players can still not have to worry about placebos and all that kind of stuff and heavy car bug or whatever. They can play the decals and stuff that they want. And then for the broadcast, for sponsorships, for professionalism, the teams will then have jerseys in game as well as out of game. So I think in time they will, for sure. I think Cloud9 will ever return to RLCS. I think it's gonna be tough, but yes, I do. They want to buy a top tier organization. They want to buy a top tier team that can win, and none of those teams are willing to do buyouts right now. So another person in chat asks, I'm sure this has been talked about, but how well do you think an LCS type league would thrive in the RL environment? 16 teams play a set schedule of weekly matches, and you can also have a AAA league underneath with promotion relegation tournament with your majors and such set as well. Fun fact, Rocket League used to do this. The RLCS and the RLRS, it was 10 teams at its end, where 10 teams competed in a weekly league play, and the worst teams at the end got relegated or kept their spots based upon on how things performed. Teams that were the better performing got to keep their spots. The unique thing, though, is there's a lot of franchise leagues where organizations, no matter how much they win or lose, keep their spots. They spend a ton of money. CDL is a franchise league. I thought League of Legends was. I could be wrong on that. But there is one key element that is difficult with that. And with Rocket League, it's age. The benefit of League of Legends is their pros have to be at least 17. A lot of their players move to facilities and live and do schooling and stuff. And with only 1 year left of high school, it's a lot easier. With Rocket League pros being able to be 15, doing regularly scheduled league play on LAN client and everything else in studio is almost impossible to do. It's just not a thing that is realistic to request from players with our young age. I do think the 15-year age restriction really hinders Rocket League from improving. I think it really does. Maybe in time that'll change. I don't think it will. I still think we'll always have upcoming prodigies and players, but we've done the promotion relegation system and all that kind of stuff, which I think is cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I personally prefer the circuit-based format. I love the fact that any team, if they perform well, can come through the open qualifiers and make it into the main event. It's not uphill battle, but I do think it's really cool. I think the current situation where organizations like Flashes of Brilliance and everything else are doing a really good job at trying to develop the bubble scene. But I think the difficulty, like CCP says, 15-year-olds only allowed in the second tier. I think that's very tough to do because you've set a precedent now for 6 years of, hey, you're 15, you can compete. This is the time you look forward to. You know, you're a young kid, 15, yep, I can go into the RLCS. And they're going to have to put in some sort of clause to change that. And I'm going to feel pretty bad for all the people that are below it. But it might be something they just have to do. Yeah, if they had an academy system versus the mainstay, it will be interesting to see on how that plays out. I don't know, man. We've done a league play system and I like it. I remember for for the grid in one of the splits, I think the last split of the grid in spring of last year was literally just a 16 team league play. It was sick. It was super cool. It was awesome watching all 16 teams play each other. It gave us basically a super expanded OG RLCS format, or RLCS 9 format. It was super cool. Last question comes from Dirt God. It says, hey Lawler, I was wondering if there's any reason behind the colors of the teams when they're playing. For example, I don't think I've ever seen FaZe being a team in blue. Yes, there is 100%. There is two ways that they determine who gets what color. By default, the higher seed in the tournament, if I am a team that has a better record and I'm the higher team, I by default am blue, low seed is orange. But for visual purposes and for making the broadcast easier to follow, if you have dominant colors, right? If I'm a team like FaZe and I'm going up against a team like Endpoint, even if Endpoint is the high seed or the low seed, say FaZe is the high seed, they're supposed to be blue, and Endpoint is supposed to be the low seed, which is orange, you're still going to see FaZe on red/orange and Endpoint on blue, just because visually it makes more sense. It is super important, I think, to associate. It just makes it easier. It's really weird, like when we broadcast V1 and V1's on orange. It just doesn't feel right. It's really odd. So they do try to match those up, especially for RLCS sanctioned events, that the primary and the predominant colors are going to be with the team that it associates to. That's the whole point of it. That is going to wrap it for today's Q&A video. Good questions all around. A little bit of everything between casting and organizational stuff and behind the scenes things too. A lot of different aspects of this Q&A as always. As a reminder, if you guys want your questions answered and they can lead to good conversation, comments down below. Like the ones that you like. Those will go to the top. We'll try to answer those and obviously point direction to that. Otherwise, you can come over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Lawler, where we stream every day but Tuesday and Sunday. We usually record these on like Wednesday or Thursday. If you guys want a general inclination of when it's going to be, come hang out with us. Come ask your questions. I try to alternate between both. Some are better than others, and we pull which ones where we can. But that is going to use it. That is going to do it. I said use it because that's the last word that I put in chat. But that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate y'all coming and hanging out. Q&A number 40 in the books. Guys been going hard. 41 next week as always, every Sunday. But if you guys haven't already and you enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.